Let's talk about the absolutely incredible story of Sheikh Hasina. We're talking about a leader whose life was shaped by an unimaginable tragedy, who rose from the ashes to build a nation, only to see her decades-long rule completely collapse in a storm of protest. It's an unbelievable story of survival, of immense power, and a legacy that to this day is just fiercely debated.
So, we're going to start at the end. Picture this. It's August 2024. The world is watching as Sheikh Hasina, the longest-serving female head of government on the entire planet, suddenly sees her iron grip on Bangladesh just shatter. After 15 straight years in power, her era was over in a flash.
So you have to ask, right? How does a political giant, someone who seemed totally unshakable for more than 5,000 days, suddenly find herself fleeing her own country, literally overnight? Well, to get that answer, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. You see, to really understand the kind of ruler Sheikh Hasina became, you first have to understand the event that created her. Her political origin story isn't one of ambition or careful planning. No, it's a story of absolute world-ending devastation, a trauma that would just echo through her entire career. This date is burned into the history of Bangladesh. On this day, a military coup went after her father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who was the revered founding father of the entire nation. But this wasn't just a simple coup to seize power. This was about annihilation. Just think about this. In a single night, army officers murdered her father, her mother, and her 3 brothers. Basically, her entire family that was in their home in Dhaka. The sheer scale of the brutality, it was just staggering. It was designed to wipe the family line right off the map. The whiplash of how quickly her life was turned upside down is just unbelievable. In the morning, she's the daughter of a national hero, studying abroad in West Germany. By that evening, she's an orphan and a political fugitive. She and her sister only survived because they happened to be out of the country, which instantly turned them into exiles overnight. So after 6 long years living in exile, Hasina makes this incredibly courageous decision. In 1981, she goes back to Bangladesh. She returns to take over her father's political party, the Awami League, and to fight against the military dictatorships that had taken over. And here's where things get really interesting. In a bizarre political twist, Hasina found herself working with her future arch nemesis, Khaleda Zia. I mean, they would become the most bitter of rivals, but back in the 1980s, these 2 women had a common enemy, and they shared one goal: bring democracy back to Bangladesh. Now, this fight for democracy would eventually lead to an unbelievable amount of time in power. Hasina would go on to be prime minister for more than 20 years in total. She became the single most dominant political force in the country for an entire generation. And, her supporters have a lot they can point to. Her government signed a critical water-sharing treaty with India. They ended a decades-long insurgency with a peace accord. They built massive infrastructure projects like the Padma Bridge, which is a huge source of national pride. And of course, she won praise from all over the world for opening Bangladesh's borders to Rohingya refugees fleeing a genocide. For many, many years, the bedrock of her power was undeniable economic progress. I mean, during her long second run in power, Bangladesh's economy just took off. We're talking about lifting millions of people out of poverty and turning the country into a true regional success story. But, and you knew there was a but coming, there is another much, much darker side to this story. As her rule went on and on, accusations of authoritarianism just got louder and louder. And those democratic principles she once fought for, well, they began to crumble. You almost have to wonder, for a leader whose family was wiped out in a coup, maybe all opposition starts to look like an existential threat. Human rights groups started painting this really grim picture of enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings. Critics, journalists, anyone who spoke out faced serious consequences. And the elections in 2014, 2018, and 2024, they were widely slammed as being anything but free or fair. And it all just exploded in 2024. It started with student protests over job quotas. Then came the brutal response, as security forces met those protesters with lethal force. But the violence, which killed hundreds, didn't crush the movement, it lit it on fire. It just ballooned into this nationwide uprising demanding one thing, and one thing only: her resignation. And on August 5th, with her power completely gone, she gave in. She fled. So, how on earth will history remember Sheikh Hasina? The answer is, well, it's deeply complicated. Her legacy is a total study in contradictions. It's like two irreconcilable stories crashing into each other.
Her legacy really puts you in a tough spot. On one side, you have the builder, the leader who delivered economic growth and amazing projects. But on the other side, you have the autocrat, the ruler who dismantled democracy and oversaw terrible human rights abuses. The crazy thing is, both of these stories are true. So after she fell from power, the interim government started investigating that 2024 crackdown. And the charges they were leveling against her were of the most serious kind you can imagine: crimes against humanity. Then, in a move that absolutely stunned the world, a tribunal in Dhaka found her guilty for her role in that deadly crackdown, and they delivered their verdict. She was sentenced to death in absentia. Now, from exile, she has, of course, condemned the sentence, calling it a politically motivated sham. And that leaves us all with this fundamental and, frankly, uncomfortable question. Sheikh Hasina's story forces us to grapple with a debate that's right at the heart of modern politics. What is the ultimate price of progress? And is that a price any society should ever be willing to pay?